Guys, good to see you on this Wednesday. In a tough week. Tough week for our country. Tough week for our women. Tough week if you're a foreigner here. It's a tough week. And I'm not saying that jokingly, it's tough. It's a tough week. It's been a tough week, and even if it's been personally well for us, it still affects us. Seeing the things that are going on still affects us, still hurts, still harms us. And yeah, it's not a good week for us. But we're here, praise God. God is good, God is faithful. And tonight we're starting this new theme, this new series, and it's called leadSERVE. So let me give you an intro. And it is this: leadership is always linked to servanthood. If you want to be a great leader, then become a great servant. If you want to lead people in a new direction or take them to a new level in this life, then serve them and their needs. The greater our capacity and willingness to serve, the greater our capacity to lead. I'm asking you to lead by serving. Jesus was the greatest example of servant leadership. And we're going to talk about that these next few weeks in this theme, in this quarter. But tonight I have a very different idea that I wanted to talk about, but it's changed a bit because I still want to talk about leading and serving, but I want to focus on something that's sad but true in our nation, in our family units, in our society, and that is, it's linked to leadership, but the lack of leadership. All these things we've been hearing in the news and stuff, we can trace back to a lack of leadership in some way. And I want to talk about that today. So, you've seen the headlines, xenophobic attacks, issue of these brutal rapes, murders, abductions, the violence in schools and against our teachers, just the common degradation of our society, of where it's gone. And it's been like this for a while, but this week it just kind of hit the pinnacle in a way. It's been coming for a while, I seem. Can we talk about these things? Are you fine? Can we talk about it? But I don't want to talk about these specific issues, all right? I don't want to talk about that specifically. I want to talk about it just from the perspective of a lack of leadership. Leadership always shows us the way to go, shows us how to get there, and it shows us why we should go there. So when we lack leadership, and we do, in so many areas of our lives, we lack direction. We lack guiding principles. We lack values that teach us how to love and treat other people. That's why so many of these horrific things keep happening. Now, I know it's not as simple as just saying it's a lack of leadership. I know it's complex issues. And I don't want to oversimplify it or make it seem like it's so easy. But I do want to focus on the role that leadership has on all of these things. Or the lack of leadership has on all of these things. See, the biggest issue we have with a lack of good leadership is that then automatically we lack value, ethics, and morals. A lack of leadership always leaves a void. Tell the people around you, it leaves a void. Without strong governing morals in this community, in this society, we descend into chaos. So we treat people how we want, we do what we want, and we're taught that there's no consequences. There's a statement John Maxwell made, and he's a well-known leadership consultant. He said, everything rises and falls on leadership. I agree. The scarcest commodity in our world is not oil or gold, it's leadership and leaders. So whenever there's a lack of leadership, it leaves a void. Something is left missing in the area, or whatever area it is, and it has terrible effects on that area. So I want to talk about 3 areas where we are lacking leadership. There's many, but I want to talk about 3 which I believe are fundamental. And the first one is the family. I want to talk to you about the lack of leadership in the family unit. Let's talk about that a little bit. Do you know that the state of the nation is fundamentally reflected in the state of the family? The lack of leadership in our family affects the state or the lack of leadership in our country. When the family units are broken and in pain, that reflects on the national stage. Let me give you some examples. An absent father is a lack of leadership from the father. Or the father's there, but he's not present. That's a lack of leadership. Or the mother's there, but doesn't give the child time because she's working so many jobs. That's a lack of leadership, regardless of the circumstance. What about a child that is not disciplined and is allowed to do whatever they want without any consequences? That's a lack of leadership. Not just bad parenting, lack of leadership. So what this does is it leaves a void. Remember, a lack of leadership always leaves a void. And the void that it leaves in this case is in the development of the child's character. The child's missing some stuff now. A child that is allowed to have or do whatever they want becomes an adult who will not accept anything less. Have you seen a child when they throw a tantrum at 4 years old? We laugh, it's cute, right? It's cute when they throw a tantrum at 4. I don't think so, but some people think it's cute. The problem is when you don't deal with it at 4, at 12 they're still doing it, at 20 they're still doing it, and then we have adults in society still throwing tantrums. Guess what? It's not cute anymore. And then we say to this person, oh, you must come right. No, you should have come right. Your parents should have sorted this out when you were 4. Lack of leadership. A child that is allowed to have or do whatever they want becomes an adult who will not accept anything less than what they want. And I'm not talking about being, persistent. I'm not talking about that. I'm saying they won't accept, no. A lack of leadership, that is also a lack of leadership. It leaves a void in the person's maturing process. We have to go through a maturing process. So their ability to conflict resolution is dwarfed or stunted. And then the resilience that we grow in life, when life tells you no, they don't develop that because they've never been told no. And we all know this, how often don't we get what we want in life? But for some reason, the family unit teaches the children that's not true, that you can get whatever you want. And that's a lie. And so people grow up being entitled. Let me talk to the men for a second, parents, and talk about boys for a second. A boy who is never taught no as a child will refuse no as an adult. If you don't teach your son, and I'm talking about sons because of the stuff that's going on with the women in our country, if you don't teach him that no is no now, when he's an adult, he's not going to accept it. Okay? And it's basic now, but it's not basic when he's had that his whole life. And then when he's like flirting with you and whistling and doing all those things, and you say no, now it's offensive because you said no. And then I'm going to use my strength. The only advantage I have over you is my physical strength. I'm going to use that to get what I want and intimidate and rape and sexually assault and whatever. And there is a link to those things. In general, if a child doesn't know how to accept no or has been told no, they won't accept it when they get older. That's a lack of leadership. The most important role a parent has in the home is as a loving leader, protector, and provider. We all know that. But then the plan or the strategy is to break the home, because if we break the home, we break the nation. It's the first attack. Break the home, break the nation. So many of us in this room probably didn't have father figures growing up. I'm one of them. I didn't have that. Some of you had a parents and they weren't available. Or you had to go through divorce. All of that stuff affects us, leaves a void in us. That's the plan. Now, why is this so important? Because if I get messed up as a child, or in my childhood, in my adolescent years, and then I have gaps in my emotional, in my mental, in my social development, then I grow into an adult that has those same gaps. And the problem is, those gaps carry consequences for me and how I function in society, but also how I relate to people around me, how I treat them. Do you see? It is a domino effect. We are interlinked as humans. I can't be a problem and it's just my problem. It's not true. We're interconnected. If I'm a problem and I'm pouring my mess onto people, it's affecting people. It's a lack of leadership. So what happens is I'm left incomplete, underdeveloped, and broken. And you've all heard this. Broken people break people. So if a child is abused or neglected in any way, it's still a lack of leadership. It's not just bad parents, it's a lack of leadership. They failed to lead their child. And that's where we're at. So we are starving for leaders in our home. Do you know what we're starving for most in our home? Men. We lack men. And the ramifications you can feel all over society. I'm not picking on the guys. I'm not picking on you. Okay? It's just the reality is, how many single moms are there? There's single dads, don't get me wrong. But there's more single moms. Let's talk about the next level, society and government. The lack of leadership in society and government. Now, this is not, please, man, it's not a political conversation. I'm just going to talk about government in general, right? And society in general. So we live in a society, and within our various cultures, that teach people that there are no consequences for their actions. We teach that. So, for example, if I'm unhappy with any situation, I can march, which is fine, but then I can burn buildings. I can break property, I can hurt people, I can kill people. And that's okay because there's no consequences for that. I can go to my job straight afterwards, and I'm safe. I'm caught on footage, but I never get charged. We lack leadership in not only the prevention, but also in the response of situations that come. So look what's happened this week with the xenophobic attacks, with the abuse, all the stuff that's going on. All right, the murders and rape. What's happening? There's a lack of beforehand, like thinking beforehand of what's happening. There's a lack of that in leadership, but there's also a lack of response after it happens. It's a problem. We lack leadership. And that lack of leadership, again, leaves a void in society. You know what the void is? It ignores the truth of life. And that truth is that there are consequences for your actions. And those consequences reach far beyond you, even to the next generation. Let's talk about this specific thing with the woman abuse and stuff. Let's talk about it. If our culture teaches us that women are inferior or less valuable than we are as men, then we can treat them with less dignity. That's where it starts. If the culture says they must cook and clean, give us babies, give us pleasure, and that's it, then no wonder we treat them like that only. If we are taught that foreign nationals are the problems in our life, and the reason I don't have work is because of them, then I can do horrendous things to them. Because I'm told that's the issue. I'm not saying that's not something to talk about. I'm saying then I put my complete situation on them. There's a lack of leadership. There's a void in understanding, and the void this time is that there's an intrinsic value of being human, and we're all equal. And that is a void because there's no leadership showing us that. And that's the problem. Now let's say I'm around my family, right? I'm around my friends, the boys, whatever, and we begin to have a racist conversation. They begin to make racist remarks. They begin to blame a certain people group for the struggles or the situations. In my family group, in my friends or whatever, and I don't correct them. I don't set a boundary. That's a lack of leadership. And that puts a void in that situation. The void is that the belief, this broken belief, is maintained. And it's the same thing. All my problems is because of another person, or another race, or another religion, or whatever. So, it's the same thing. If I'm around the guys and the guys are talking about a certain woman and they're like, look at all the body parts that they like the most and what I would do to this girl, right? And you just sitting around laughing and joking, or you don't correct them, what's happened? There's a void, a lack of leadership and a void, and then and what happens is the consequence, the natural consequence is now my view or my attitude towards women is that they are there for my pleasure. And they better not say no. It's a lack of leadership from society and from government. So imagine years and years of this reinforcing, of government in action, of society telling us certain things. It grows to a point where the behavior is so severe, like we've seen on the news. This is not, we're so surprised at this, but this has been happening for years in the background, and then it reaches the climax. That's what we're in, the climax. And it starts with these little attitudes, these little conversations that we have or allow. And when we do allow it, lack of leadership. So, think about this now. We get to a stage where we're used to these things, and we justify the behaviors that we do. So, for example, for me, I believe if you're caught murdering, rape, all those kind of things, child abduction, you must face the full might of the law. Whatever that means, you must face it. But the problem is, when these situations happen, then the person gets like a 10-year sentence. It's like, is human life worth that? So what's happened? It's a lack of leadership in the response. So people are saying, I can do that, and the consequence isn't so heavy, which is not true, because the people who are the victims live with that forever. It never goes away. It's a lack of leadership. The really sad reality is that we live in a culture that empowers victimhood and enables the broken to stay that way. And the third area I want to talk about, which I believe is the greatest lack of leadership in our society, is the ability to lead ourselves. Nothing is worse. See, if you refuse to lead yourself, you can't lead anything. If you refuse to take responsibility for your actions and your life, then you'll always blame others. You'll always blame other people for your lack in life or your problems or your situation. You'll always feel as though you're a victim and life-governed people owe you something. And even if I do wrong, it's okay because the consequences aren't so bad. And the sad thing is most people don't get beyond that stage of victimhood. So if I look down on a certain race of people, a gender, a religion, whatever, and I don't lead myself to challenge my broken beliefs, to seek help, to improve, to be humbled, to face the consequence of my actions, my beliefs, my attitudes, my behaviors, then I will remain the poison in our society. I will remain that. And most people, like I said, never get beyond there. They stay there. When my brokenness pours onto others and I do nothing, I lack self-leadership. It's not your fault that you ended up in the brokenness you're in. I'm not saying you're the reason you ended up in the brokenness you're in, but it is your responsibility to find healing from that which broke you. Whose responsibility is it? Ours. It's unfair? Yes. It's unfair that I have to deal with the mess someone else gave me. It's unfair, yes, but who's going to do it? Government? Your family? No, you. It has to be you. And that's where true change begins. That's where true change in the family begins. When I take responsibility for my stuff. When I take responsibility for my attitudes. When I take responsibility for my failures and my past and my brokenness. And stop making excuses. And stop empowering myself by making excuses. I'm like this because of this. You like this. You like that because of what's happened, yes. But you stay that way because of you. And we have to change. And it's hard. The Bible says something so powerful. It says, do unto others as you would have them do to you. Treat others the way you would like to be treated. And then all these headlines that you read, and etc., none of that's happening. But what a solution that would be to all this stuff. What a solution. Just treat other people as you would like to be treated. But instead, we live in a culture where we burn, we kill, we rape, we molest, we hurt, we harm, we destroy our fellow humans. And why? Because we have not led ourselves correctly. We have not been led correctly. In fact, we don't want to be led. And so we've kicked even God out. Like, God, I don't want your authority. I don't want your word. I don't want your principles. And I've kicked it out. And then we find ourselves in these situations. And what happens is we violate self-responsibility and we ignore the consequences of our actions, beliefs, and attitudes. And we've become godless by making ourselves God. We lack leadership. We lack being led. We don't allow God to lead us either. So the point of this series is to equip us to rise and become the leaders that are so badly needed in every area of life, every arena of life. And those are leaders who don't tell people what to do or lord it over people, but it's leaders who serve those around us, who serve. If that means I'm going to have a difficult conversation with family members, that means I'm going to do that because I'm serving the people around me. I'm serving the culture I belong to, the society I belong to. And that's hard. And that means you're going to face opposition. Yes. It's going to face persecution. Yes. You're not going to be popular. Yes. But that is what leadership is. It's not a popularity contest. It's never been. And we need more people to serve their fellow man.